against extremism, Canada's House of Commons has passed the Combating Hate Act, also known as Bill C-9, cracking down on the public display of symbols linked to designated terrorist groups. The legislation, which cleared third reading on March 25th by a vote of 186 to 137, makes it a criminal offence to willfully promote hatred by openly displaying flags or emblems associated with banned outfits, including Khalistani terror groups like Babbar Khalsa International and the International Sikh Youth Federation. It also targets intimidation and obstruction at places of worship and schools. The bill now moves to the Senate for final approval before becoming law. In a contrasting development, gun-related charges against prominent Khalistani activists and Sikhs for Justice leader Inderjeet Singh Gosal have been stayed by an Ontario court. Gosal, arrested last September along with two others over a loaded, prohibited handgun, now walks free as the charges are suspended and expected to be dropped after a year unless revived. This comes amid continued tensions over Khalistan-related activities on Canadian soil. And joining me now is Mr. Surinder Singh Lali. He's a foreign affairs expert. Mr. Sanjay Lazar, aviation expert, and Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar. He's a defense and geopolitical expert. I want to go across first to Mr. Surinder Singh Lali for his comments on this issue.
Thank you, Vishali. I'd like to thank NewsX from the bottom of my heart for giving space to the likes of me, proud Indian Sikh. 87% of us live in India. So sometimes it fails me to understand what these Johnnies are doing in Canada, which referendum are they trying to hold, and who are they holding a brief for. Now, for me, as a personally proud Indian Sikh, I'm very relieved. Why? Because the flag that they use for that whatever movement or whatever they wish to call it, and I don't want to even dignify them with the entire word, because according to me, these are fringe rogues which are nourished by the deep state in Canada for their political and vested interests. And these Johnnies then use Sikhism and Sikh religion as a tool to further their separatist agenda. One thing which used to personally bother me, and I would be relieved now, is that the flag which they use as the K flag has the Sikhi Khanda in it. Now that is an extremely sacred article of faith and an element in Sikh religion. You know, it is considered imperative and mandatory for all Gurdwaras to have a Nishan Sahib, which has the Khanda in it, the sacred Sikh flag, flying high at all locations according to the Sikhi Zahat Maryada, which is the code of conduct sanctioned by the Akal Takht. Now, this Nishan Sahib, which they very loosely use as a weapon, as an instrument, and especially there are times this has been trampled upon, which is for me an act of blasphemy. They should be, tried for that, because the Nishan Sahib acts as a beacon, signboard, and a lighthouse indicating to all, Vaishali, all, any religion, caste, creed, or nationality, as they have reached a place called a Gurudwara Sahib, a place for safety, langar, and community service. So look at the, the profound, the pious meaning the Sikhi Nishan Sahib has, so much so that we don't even call it a flag, because we feel it undermines what it stands for, because the Khanda is a symbol of Sikhism representing the fundamental tenets of faith. It combines the symbol in it. It combines four weapons: the central double-edged sword, a circular chakra, and two kirpans in it, symbolizing divine power, eternity, and the balance between spiritualism and temporal authority. So imagine what looseness with these things, these rogues were hurting the sentiments of all Sikhs across the world. So once again, Vishali, thank you so much for allowing this showcase to the likes of many Indian Sikhs that we are able to also keep our narrative. And I'm so happy that under the government of Mark Carney, finally they've understood on how these rogues sabotage the relationship between two English-speaking democracies with such a large diaspora. So Vishali, I'm relieved and I'm going to enjoy my glass of lassi today. Thank you.
Mr. Lali, always interesting and fair points made by you. Because, of course, that's a fair point. Sikhism is, of course, known to be a very peaceful religion and a very humanitarian religion. And, of course, this bill comes as a welcome move. And I say this being a Punjabi myself. But now moving forward, I want to bring in Mr. Sanjay Lazar, who's an aviation expert, into the conversation. Mr. Lazar, there has been a contradictory move that has happened to this. Of course, we are talking about the fact that there is a move that has come when two people have been let go by the court. Two previous Khalistani, some charges have been dropped against these prominent Khalistani activists as well. How do you see that development?
Thank you, Vaishali, for having me on the show. And I'm not only an aviation expert, let me make that clear. I lost my entire family in the Kanishka bombing 41 years ago, and I've been fighting the Khalistanis and trying to get justice for the victims of Kanishka for the last 40 years in court as a petitioner. I'm also the author of 2 books on Khalistan. So that's a very personal part of my life. Aviation is this. Now, coming back to what you said, C-9 has passed the first stage, the third reading in the Senate, in the House, and now it goes to the Senate. So it's a very, very big step, as Laliji said. I'm grateful that Mark Carney and his government have ensured the passage over these last 6 months. It was introduced in September 2025, it's here. As far as the Senate is concerned, it will be touch and go, but I'm pretty confident because it also looks after anti-Semitism, racism against people of color, and other aspects apart from the Khalistani terrorism angle. I'm pretty confident that this will clear the Senate, and good luck to all of us who've faced Khalistani terror. As far as these 2 people who've now been let go, you have to understand the Canadian legal system. And as a lawyer, I do understand, as a petitioner before the Canadian courts in criminal as well as the John Major inquiry, I've seen it up close and personal. It's a very, very liberal law. And the standard of proof is probably 10 times higher than what we would face in our country. So therefore, for the police to prove certain charges are always going to be difficult. Though it's actually illegal to carry arms, to bear arms in Canada, I'm surprised how, one of these people who you spoke about got away. But I'm sure that the government will look at, the RCMP and the Crown here, will look at ways of bringing the charges back, because the government's policy towards terrorism and towards people who use weapons and extreme force has changed over the last 12 months. We've seen the marked difference since the time Mark Carney became provisional prime minister and then got elected, and the positive steps being taken across the board. Yesterday I was on your channel also, and we spoke of Nancy Grewal's brutal killing and how the police are now finding the Khalistanis' involvement in this. So this is also another big step forward. I'm very hopeful that Canada will correct this anomaly that we've seen not only in these 2 instances but over the last 40 years, and we will see finally justice, and you won't see this free speech nonsense that goes on, and they misuse free speech to propagate terrorism. That should stop very soon. Thank you.
Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar, I'm coming to you now. Now, do you see this legislation as a response to international pressure or purely domestic considerations?
Thank you, Vishali, and my best wishes to both the panelists who have spoken their minds very effectively. Vaishali, I think it is both domestic as well as international, because uh, domestically also, when you speak to the Sikhs in Canada, which is almost about 4 to 5% of their population, uh, they distance themselves from these Khalistanis, which is just a minority. But the advantage these people have taken, organizations like the Babbar Khalsa International and International Sikh Youth Federation, Sikhs for Justice, and things like that. Uh, they have become a political tool as part of the government, as Jagmeet Singh's party also last time. This time, his party hasn't done too well. So that's the indication for the people of Canada also to reject them now, because earlier Jagmeet called the shots, and he was able to manipulate what he wanted the government to do, and he was a pro Khalistani purely on account of votes. So I see a very a good sign where the Prime Minister Kani is moving from a liberal free speech, a dominant framework, to a controlled speech in the security context. And I think this is the first step. You see, he has started with symbols. And I would appreciate that in times to come, these organizations also get banned. Because I know how difficult it will be for him to push this in the Senate also. But it's a very, very good step that he has started with the symbols part, and he has not started with the organization as such, because that would have led to a lot of opposition and problems in Canada. So we are now seeing this a welcome sign. And my last point is, I think this is an indication of the Canada and India reset of relations also, because we need to look at this aspect from the point of view of India Canada relations. And I think yesterday only External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has spoken to his counterpart Anita there in Canada. So it is, you can say, an indication of a growing relationship between India and Canada. And one of the concerns of India with regard to our relations with Canada was to curtail these Khalistanis there, because the laws were actually such there that they could get away with murder also. So I think taking into account the overall context of this legislation, I think it's a very, very welcome sign.
All right, that's interesting, Major General Kochhar, that you mentioned this, because that was in fact my next question that I was going to pose to Mr. Lally. And Mr. Lally, I was going to ask you this. What impact could this have on diplomatic relations between India and Canada?
Vaishali, right from Trudeau Sr., who took all of this very lightly, and had it not been the case, my condolences to Sanjay ji's family. We wouldn't have lost an airline with 329 passengers, for which we still await justice. And I salute Sanjay ji for keeping that alive, so that end of the day we need a closure to it. That's one. And two, for the next statement I'm going to be making, I could be ostracized in society, but the silver lining to Donald Trump's 2.0 is that the way he ridiculed, belittled, insulted Canada, Mark Carney realized, because end of the day, he's a smart guy, he's a banker, he's a pretty intelligent and well-educated guy, and he realized the way, America was almost out to annex Canada, and bad relations with China, and now doing away with the fifth largest economy in the world and the largest growing economy. There is no way not just Canada, but a lot of this global business which can prosper if India is not taken, into the right side. So Carney is an educated man. He realized that maybe Trudeau Jr., for his short-term, narrow-minded gains in keeping that Jagmeet Singh, who's also known as the Maserati Marxist, and I'm sure he realized that he was negotiating on Canada's interest in terms of economic and diplomatic relationships. So he realized that if he did the cost-benefit analysis, there was no point entering to these minuscule minority, irrespective of how much, funding they did to the Canadian politics and their penetration into the police and RCMP. So I guess end of the day, logic, rationality, and prudence prevailed on Mark Carney to understand that two English-speaking democracies with such a large diaspora and so much, the two countries can benefit out of each other. Look at the way the world is so fraught and polarized. I mean, today even the GCC countries are divided amongst themselves, and then the European Union is, thrown under the bus by Donald Trump. So it's a very fragmented world. And for Canada to do without India would have been harakiri. So I'm so happy that better sense has prevailed, and he's understood that these Johnnies should be put back into the place where they belong, because for me, they have nothing to do with Sikhism. They're just Canadian Sikhs. They have nothing to do with India. And what they do and say has absolutely no backing. Their thoughts don't resonate with us. We don't appreciate what they say, and we don't subscribe to their ideology. So this is one of the many reasons why Mark Carney understood that better sense has to prevail, and we have to move forward, make new alliances. Otherwise, we'll be left behind in this world. Vishali.
Right. Mr. Lazar, of course, we did speak about the Kanishka bombing. Now, I have two parts to my question. The first, of course, is that even now, the kin still feel that justice hasn't been served. And the fact that it was delayed for so long has created that frustration. So I want you to speak a little bit about that. And the second part to my question is that how do you really assess this move by Canada in the larger global fight against extremism?
Thank you, Vishali. Of course, I'm one of the many families. We have our own organization. We have constantly been lobbying and petitioning the Canadian government over the last 40 years. There are people who work in Ottawa, who live in Ottawa, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, and we keep writing and meeting. I myself go on speaking tours right across Canada and the UK and Ireland, where the aircraft crashed, and speak against terrorism. And I was, like I said, a petitioner before the John Major Commission. I attended the criminal trial. Gross miscarriage of justice in the criminal trial. And that is where it got me to understand that the Canadian system of law is so different from us. They threatened, they killed witnesses, they kidnapped them. There was so much of unfairness in that trial. It still hurts me even till this day. We were robbed of justice. The John Major inquiry at a cost of 130 million was conducted. We had 2 years of hearings, and we got a report that actually indirectly pointed the finger to Babbar Khalsa and Talvinder Singh Parmar and all of them. We still engage along with the Canadian government. We still ensure we have 5 memorials across Canada. In fact, this last year, we appealed to the Prime Minister Modi, and Prime Minister sent a delegation of 6 or 7 Sikh leaders led by Hardeep Singh Puri ji, who's cabinet minister, and Tarun Chugh, and a lot of other Sikhs from Punjab, Kashmir, Jammu, to Ireland to participate in the 40th anniversary commemoration. Very big step. We're all looking for justice, and what we want to see is the quelling of all these violent acts, the propagation of terror on Canadian or any other soil against the Indian government and the Indian state. We've already paid for it with the families of our lives of our families. I've lost my father, my mother, and my baby sister. I was orphaned at 17. There are so many entire families wiped out. So we'd like to see that. The steps that the government is taking and the Canadian government are very, very positive. I followed it very closely. I interact very closely both with the Indian government as well as the Canadian government at a subliminal level. For, there is a lot of backroom diplomacy that went on before Mr. Kani and Mr. Modi met for the first time at the G7. There's also a trade deal that was blooming, and I had written about it last year that it will happen by the year end or this year. So I can see a lot of positive steps. You'll also notice that the Indian government doesn't say too much. The Canadian government also doesn't say too much in the front. They do things quietly and they ensure it gets done. If you notice, even the C7, this current vote, C6 vote, the NDP and the Conservatives voted against it. It was the Liberals and the Independents that made it sail through. So we are hoping that the same carries forward in the Senate. I also expect a few more
Mr.
bills
Nazar,
to come
I
out
hate to interrupt you at this point because I really appreciate your sharing this personal loss with us. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. And Mr. Lali and Major General Kochar, I wish some conversations could be extended, but we're very